Hello and welcome to the BuildaSoil Family Farms YouTube series. Today we're going to be doing a ferment here on the farm. I'm really excited. We have Miles from Fermented Plant Extracts. What I think is really exciting about this is we're going to be using stuff from around the farm. We're going to be using beet greens that we've harvested over last week. We have dandelions. It's kind of fun because for me, that whole idea of sustainability and being able to use things from around your farm to feed your farm, just stuff that you have already, it's really cost effective, and it's the whole point of the no-till sustainable farming concept. So I'm really excited for today. Miles and I have been trying to get together for a while now, so we're finally here. We're really excited to show you the process.
We're going to mix up a batch of fermented plant extracts for Gwen to use on the farm all season, not only on the plants and the soil, but also on compost piles to help them break down. It's really about closing the loop on your farm. And between whatever plant matter that you can collect on your property to make these, all the ingredients are available at BuildaSoil other than the plant matter that you need to use for the fermentation. And it's coming out of the ground everywhere around us, just about doing a little research and using the best plants and getting them from a clean source that's not been sprayed or polluted. And and we're gonna get to it.
Awesome. So we harvested beets last week. We have greens that were looking a little wilty that I wouldn't want to send out to customers. So we're gonna take those today, bring them inside.
I mean, these are so prime, I would still eat these, but we got extra. Gwen stands behind what she sells out in the community. So if she says these are for fermenting, I'm with it.
One of the things people love to do with beet greens is juice them. So, even though the product isn't prime, like for a salad plate, you definitely could still use this in your juicing if you wanted to. We had an extreme amount, so I have a lot of extra, and I'm really excited to be able to use what I would potentially put in the compost pile here in the ferment today. So
a big part of this is empowering the farmers to do better with what they have without raising the cost of production on the farm. So yeah, I'm so happy to be able to spread this around.
Have you ever used beet greens before for your ferments?
I've used whole beets with the beets root and the green before. Cool. Last year I did a turnip, carrot, and beet one.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I called it root fruit, but it had tops and roots on it. But beets are super good for you. They've got tons of nutrients.
Really nutrient
I've read before, I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but I've read before that beet greens are a source of boron.
Okay.
We also got dandelions, which are super nutrient dense. I think there's a little bit of alfalfa scraps in there, maybe from some weeds that grew around. We're just gonna call it the spring mix because it's spring and this is what's coming up naturally and what's around at this time of the year and available.
Over here we have basically the pile of weeds that the guys have pulled out.
This is a nice dandelion. We're gonna dig through this and pull out what we like. There's some thistle, this morning glory bindweed stuff. You can use any kind of flowers. I saw someone back east, like in the spring, they have the azaleas going off. And even though they're so beautiful, you can go and strip them. We got lilacs out here. People could use lilac flowers. I've used in the springtime, we live around orchards. And the orchards all trim these little small branches off the trees in the spring, and they just have huge windrows of them in the middle of and I just went up and collected them. Some of y'all might remember it from BuildaSoil a while back where it was the apple twig ferment, and it was the strips of little fresh new growth trimmed off the apple trees, packed into vessels and fermented. So I believe this has tons of potential for all kinds of applications. It's kind of just make sure what you're fermenting isn't toxic. Don't be doing poison ivy or something crazy like that. The process works. It's a pH drop that indicates the ripeness, and the concept is the microbes, they eat the sugars and the plant matter in the solution, and that brings all the nutrition in the plant matter into the liquid solution. So we're basically taking the nutrition content in these plants and extracting it through microbial digestion.
What exactly do I need for a ferment? Like, I know we've got the greens. Obviously, I brought molasses, and that's the sugars that's going to start breaking things down. And what else when you're making a ferment?
So the main ingredients are, like you said, plant matter and a sugar source. And then you've got lactic acid bacteria, which can come in the form of the Korean Natural Farming Prep labs. EM1 is a good one. You can make your own labs using instructions online. It's very easy. And another one that's really vital that I like to use because I have access to it is Whey. And that's a byproduct of cheese making. So I have some friends who are really good goat farmers and really great dairy guys, and they make amazing cheese and milk up there in Paonia. And I just get their Whey as a byproduct. and that stuff is full of lactic acid. It's full of the bacteria we need. So the sugars are going to kickstart the process. That's what the microbes are going to eat real quick and get going on, and then they're going to go to town on the more, nutrient dense, and it takes a little more work to break down plant matter. But so the sugar is going to get the population up, and then that population is going to really work on the plant matter.
And in my mind, I think of making kombucha. It's close to that because that sugar source is really important.
Either way, the sugar source in kombucha, it works the same way because it is a quick, fast food for the microbes. And then the microbes, once they get up to population, they can move on and start working on the plant matter.
Okay.
Sugar's not a great food source, it's just sugars. So that's why we're adding these nutrient-dense plants. That's why in kombucha we add teas and other fruits and stuff for nutrition and flavor and all that. An important point to make is that the molasses in this brew will be entirely consumed by the microbes before it's used on the plants. And that will be indicated by a pH drop in the solution and by the smell. We were talking about this. You will know the ferment is done because it does not smell like molasses. It doesn't smell sweet anymore. It smells more bitter, fermented, not alcohol-y, but kind of cidery, and it's got a very unique and noticeable smell.
These are the products Miles brought in today that we're going to be using.
This is lactic acid bacteria made by the Korean natural farming method. This is another great product, EM1 from Terraganics. This is the original lactic acid bacteria product that was licensed by Dr. Higa to Terraganics. It's a probiotic for so many different purposes. Big thanks to Eric Lancaster for everything he did with this stuff.
We love Eric.
Yes, and then this is just the Whey. This came from a goat farm in my area up by Paonia, and it's full of lactic acid bacteria in a local microbiota of like the microbes of the specific strains and varieties of lactic acid bacteria that live here.
Local. That's huge to us. I think that anybody who is passionate about, I think, like what we do here at BuildaSoil and the concept that we share, grow food and share it with the local community. When we all focus on that and bringing things and stop sourcing things from all over the entire world, if everybody did that, our local communities would be really strong in that aspect of things. I think it's really important. It makes me feel good, and I think it makes other people feel good too.
Yeah. The work you're doing here to grow nutrient-dense food in a responsible way is a model that I believe in the future, not so far future, it's going to be emulated, and it already is being replicated all over the country, all over the world. Yeah, so I think like even what Growing Organic does with the community composting program, it's we're all just down here trying to do our part.
I think it's time to get started making this ferment. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's take all this inside and get going. What benefits do my plants get from a ferment? It's not a nitrogen source, is it? Or
it's twofold. There is a nutritive quality to them, depending on what plant matter you ferment determines that nutritive content. So if you ferment something super rich in nitrogen, then yes, you will have nitrogen in there. It's not going to be a huge amount like you would get from a fish pure protein or something like that, but they do have nutritive content. The other benefit, which I consider the main benefit, is the lactic acid bacteria. That's the inoculant. These guys are specialists at breaking down organic matter. And that's what our soil is rich in. That's what we use our amendments for and compost.
The whole no-till concept is that, right?
Yes, so once you get that organic matter in your soil, you need microbial action to break it down. So what we're doing is we're kind of skipping a couple steps to produce a nutrient-dense liquid that can be fed immediately, and the microbes will be they'll be supercharged, vigorous population of microbes that you'll introduce into your soil. And those guys are going to work on the organic matter in the soil to make it available. Yeah.
Awesome. Tell me this. Have you ever failed? Have you just ever ruined a batch?
So the worst thing that can happen is if you don't seal the top properly.
Okay.
And that doesn't necessarily fail it. It's just you get a top layer that isn't as useful.
Or like it's gone bad than being alive.
Still alive. It's just like the top layer that air has been exposed to has a bunch of life you're not really interested in.
That makes sense.
You want these facultative anaerobes. Facultative means they can live in aerobic or anaerobic. So facultative anaerobes, they thrive and will blow up in population in an anaerobic condition, but then when you get them in the soil, they still live and do their thing.
Okay.
A lot of people have fears of anaerobes, and even though we're doing an anaerobic brew here, it's a lactobacillus is a facultative anaerobe. and it's extremely beneficial. So we have, as long as we're culturing the right thing in here, we have no risk of problems.
Sweet, yeah, I would have never known that. That's cool. Miles, how long does this take?
About 2 weeks is a safe time frame to expect these things to brew, but they are dependent upon your environment. So the temperature, a warm temperature will make them brew quicker, just like all fermentation. A faster brew happens in a warm temperature. Cooler temperatures will slow it down. As long as you never freeze or have extended long hot temperatures, this thing will be fine and it'll just keep fermenting away. Right now we're just getting it mixed up with all this good plant matter that you've grown and some of your weeds from the farm. So where do you see the temperature range in here?
At nighttime we have heaters. We're not letting the greenhouse go below 60 degrees right now, and it's springtime. About 85, 90 degrees at the max in here.
Perfect. That's right in range. So those are next to ideal conditions.
Great. Right here we filled this up. This is a 250 gallon tank. Where do we start?
Really adding these ingredients, as long as you get everything in the tank and get it brewing, it's good. I like to add the plant matter first. I'm gonna grab a pillowcase is what I use. So the point of a bag to hold your plant matter is so that when you go to empty this out, you don't get plant matter mixing into your pump. You can clean it.
I was actually wondering about that before we got started, because I know when I make a tea, I'm not just dumping the ingredients in there. It makes so much sense. How cool.
I sometimes will throw rocks in this thing just to keep it sunk down. It seems like we're gonna be pretty good.
You sure you don't want to throw a rock in there?
Yeah, let's throw a rock in there. A little bit of dirt's okay. Some extra minerals. I'm gonna break it up just a little bit just to get this material sweating a little bit.
Yeah.
Lovely beet greens. You got extra, you use it. You got stuff that you can't sell, it's not moving off the shelves, you use it. This is about making the best use of everything you have at your disposal.
You know, we've got 3, 6, 9, 12 pounds of beet greens here, because each one of these bags weighs 3 pounds. What's the ideal like amount of green or whatever organic matter that you're going to put in there?
As long as we get about 5 or 10 gallons volume wise, we'll be good. Plant matter feed is kind of variable. Some recipes for this preparation would call for you to fill this vessel and to pack this vessel with plant matter. For my purposes, I think that getting more liquid and just enough plant matter to get this process going is best, because it's about producing more of this liquid.
That makes sense. And so I have a kind of an off question here for you. Like, I know you've been farming for a long time. This is something you're passionate about. You've always been a grower, but like, what got you into doing these ferments? Like, what was it? Was it because you felt the need for it on your farm? Yeah, well, to me, it was about lowering the cost of production, just to be able to do what I do and produce a high-end product for less money. Yeah, that's so cool.
Less trips to the grow store, as we say. And that's the great thing about BuildaSoil, is that BuildaSoil is always empowering growers to do better on their own and to provide them the tools they need to make preparations like this and to close their loop and to lower the cost of production, make their own preparation.
One of the things that since I've met Jeremy is that exact thing, is that he's always wanting people, you know, yeah, we provide the product and we have it there, and you can skip doing things yourself and buy stuff from BuildaSoil, but I know he's always been really passionate about having people and teaching people to do it themselves. Well, we just want people to be empowered that way and learn.
When you're providing value to people and showing them the way and teaching people stuff and selling them the ingredients, the value is apparent, and it's really great to see people responding and doing these things themselves and learning about. I get so many messages, hey, I'm making my own, how do I do this and that, and questions, and I love that.
One of the first things I learned over there was how to make tea. Cool. You know, and how to just take ingredients, double, triple the ability, you know, to use it, and you have just like this small amount of products, and you can just blow it up and have quadruple what you started with.
Exactly.
So cool. Saves a lot of money and time.
Yeah, I mean, this is the preparation of these ferments. It's got a synergistic effect. The end product is greater than the sum of its parts. You add some greens, some microbes, some sugar, some water, and you get this really vital prep. Where if you were just like decomposing these greens in a compost pile and just watering in the water, just watering in the lactobacillus, you wouldn't get the same results.
Yeah. Do we need more product than this? I mean, we have some stuff out there if we want to run out and grab it.
We will have to seal this because this process as we said before, is anaerobic. That means no air. So we're going to cover this with a piece of plastic so that air doesn't get in. Usually I just open this cap and do everything through the hole in the lid, which is, see how small that hole is. It's a little bit more work to do it that way. But it'll be a little bit more work to get this thing covered proper, so it's all the same.
So I grabbed a bucket here out of those weeds we had outside.
You can do this process with a lot of things. Plants are just the most readily available and make a lot of sense. And we could even throw one more rock on the top.
Get it weighed down.
Yeah.
There's some flowers on those morning glories.
Lovely.
Oh, and here's the dandelion. Awesome. And those rocks are basically to just weigh it down, keep it in the bottom, right?
Yeah, just to keep all our plant matter submerged where the microbes can get to it.
Totally.
And if it's floating, the microbes can't eat it. Another thing I like to do when I do these is I'll often tie a string around this so that it's easy to fish out. Do you have any?
I definitely do.
Cool. So these are our inoculants. We got the KNF lactic acid bacteria preparation right here. Very easy to make, lots of instructions online.
Pour it in. Smells amazing.
Yeah, it's like a sweet soy sauce kind of thing. That's the cool thing about Korean natural farming. So much of it is, if you make it correctly, is food grade, is human grade.
Cool.
So this EM1, again, thank you Terraganics for this, and thank you BuildaSoil. We are adding the microbial inoculants to this. These are the lactic acid bacteria that do all the work. They will digest the sugars and plant matter in this solution and extract the nutrition from the plant matter into the liquid. The lactic acid bacteria is really vital. For a long time, it was kind of considered a trade secret, and a lot of really good farmers and gardeners and horticulturalists would make this stuff on their own and not tell anybody, and kind of reap the rewards and the benefits and the clout of having a beautiful garden with all the benefits of these microbes. And you know, people couldn't figure it out. They weren't sure why or how.
And we're not about that. We're about sharing. We've talked about that. We don't like withholding information. It just we want everybody to be successful, and that's why we do these videos, right? If you have things that you've learned along the way, I love learning that too, because no matter what, I think no matter how long you've been doing it, you always are constantly learning something. There's always different variables that come into play, and so sharing, I think, is just so important from one person to the other, because we can all learn from each other. My other question for you real quick before we go any further is there like an exact ratio of, say, molasses to water, EM1 to water?
Great question. So a good framework to work around, a good recipe to kind of keep in mind, is 1 to 1 to 1 to 100. Okay. So that's 1 part sugars, 1 part lactic acid bacteria, 1 part plant matter to 100 parts water.
Got it.
That recipe can be tinkered with and adjusted to your needs, but generally the sugar source, you don't need more than 1 to 100. The plant matter, you could go way higher.
Okay.
And the inoculant, you could go higher. It's just about not being wasteful with your lactic acid bacteria or wasteful with your labs. But if you have plenty of plant matter, you could put more. You could put 2 or 3 times as much plant matter in here, no problem.
Okay.
But we wouldn't want to add 2 or 3 times the molasses. This is an extremely vital resource to farmers. It's been done all over the world. I've talked to people in Asia and Mexico, North America, South America. People are doing these kind of things. They've been doing these kind of things for a long time, and the recipes change. Some people use manure in them. They ferment manure in some places. Some places, they don't culture the labs. They just have a abundance of milk, so they just add milk into it.
Okay.
But I feel like what we're doing here is a process I've developed over years, and this is what works really well for me, because using what we have around here.
Yeah, closing the loop.
When I work with farms in other regions, I'm always looking for, what do they have that's different from Colorado? What do you have access to here that we could use and we can tinker with? Molasses, straight from BuildaSoil. I like to just spread it. I like to just go back and forth with it.
Yeah, let it kind of dilute as it falls in.
I like pouring it on the bag.
Yeah.
Because that's putting the sugar source right there next to that plant matter which is the real source of food for the microbes. This sugar is just a starter. The real food source is that nutrient-dense plant matter we're using.
Like when I make a tea, right? I put my Aero mixer in here and I brew it, I bubble it, Do you do that with this?
Nope, this is an anaerobic fermentation. So there is no agitation, no bubbling. It's just about getting all the ingredients in there and letting it sit and monitoring the pH for ripeness and for readiness.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I dunk and
Yes, perfect.
get it out of there? Getting crazy.
And the one thing when you add the sugars like this, and they do settle to the bottom, when you open it, if it's not ready, you'll see, like, it'll look like molassesy water coming out. If it's not ready and you start taking out, you will know because it will smell just like molasses.
Molasses, yeah.
And it'll
Which
smell
molasses is really strong. I love it. It reminds me of Christmas cookies.
Yeah,
Remember Christmas cookies? I actually used BuildaSoil molasses this Christmas to make cookies for everyone. So.
Nice. And that's another cool thing is we use a lot of the stuff we use in natural farming is human byproduct. Like if your sugar got a little, if your molasses got old or you don't want to use it or mouse got into it or something. It's good for farming. It's good for tea making. It's good for just like the beet green. Just like they're just a little bit past prime and you're not going to put them on the shelves anymore. They're perfect for fermenting.
It's really cool. I can actually see myself already doing this quite a bit around the farm. It'll be really cool if I can utilize that waste and make something that's good for the farm. It'll be really cool.
Yeah, this is an amazing resource for farmers to use.
All right, so we've put in the molasses, and this is
Whey. This is a 5-gallon bucket of goat whey. There's probably chunks of cheese in it. It smells cheesy. Not too bad. It smells
kind of like just goat milk.
Yeah, it smells like a sour cheese type of thing. But this is vital if you can get your hands on whey. If you know cheese makers, this is usually just thrown out and wasted in the cheese making process, but it is a vital resource for natural farmers.
Awesome.
It's huge. You could apply this, if you had abundance of it, you could apply this just directly to the soil too.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't really know that. Like, just in my mind, I never thought I would put like milk in my farm or any type of cheese or dairy product, right? It's really cool that active bacteria is actually good for your garden.
Yeah, we have to be vigilant of animal byproducts. So if you know your farmer, if you know your ranchers, and you have faith that they care enough to produce a clean, safe product, go for it.
Yeah,
use it.
Makes sense.
You know, so that's another thing, just connecting with the community and really knowing who's around you and getting to be on good terms with people so you can share resources, share knowledge, because these are the kind of communities that we're building by doing these natural farming things.
We have this 5-gallon bucket, it's full. How much of this are we using?
Honestly, I'm going to dump it all in because this is an inoculant and we can't have too much of it.
Okay.
And it's in abundance, so we're grateful for that and we're going to use it. These recipes are fluid. You know, different people use them in different ways in different circumstances. And for me, the strongest concentration of lactic acid bacteria I can get in these things, the better.
Awesome.
So we're just going to add it all.
Okay.
Here we go. There's lots of chunks of like proteins. There's other stuff other than labs in here. So all these protein chunks and little pieces of cheesiness, that all becomes another food source for the microbes. They all are going to go to town on that. And so that's the brew. Everything we need now is in here. We have our sugar source for the microbes. We have our plant source for the microbes. And we have our microbes. The water is like the home. And we stock their fridge. And soon every room in that house is going to be full, crammed full of microbes. We need to cover this well, just seal it up as best you can. We're going to use some Gorilla Tape on this. But yeah, you don't want air getting to this. You want it to be sealed up.
Let's talk about what's going to happen throughout the process. So maybe this might try to bubble up.
Yep, there is an off-gassing that happens in this, just like with a lot of fermentations. So usually it's not an issue, but with this plastic top on it, we might have this top, it might puff up a little bit. So I told Gwen, if that happens, you can just take this right here, let them release some of that pressure and seal it back. This spot right here is a great place to put an airlock. If you want to do this in a big tank that's intact, putting an airlock right there will make it so you never have to burp it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So what's going to happen here is the microbes are going to eat the sugars, eat the plant matter. They're going to off-gas a little bit, and ultimately they're going to fill this tank with lactic acid bacteria. The population is going to explode. And one thing lactic acid bacteria do is they create a slurry to live in that is favorable for them. And what's favorable for them is lactic acid. That's why they're called lactic acid bacteria. Being an acid, that's going to drop the pH of this solution. And that's how you're going to know that it's ready. You're going to see the pH gradually drop, which the speed it drops, the speed the fermentation happens, is relative to temperature primarily. So being nice and warm in this great greenhouse, being springtime, we're expecting nice warm temperatures here. I'm thinking 7 to 10 days, maybe 14. This thing could be ready. So we're just gonna keep an eye on the pH. I like to use the strips, like the pH. They come on like a little roll, and usually what I'll do is I'll take a little bit out of the bottom, out of the release at the bottom.
Okay.
And I'll fill a little cup and I'll just dip my strip in it and look and see. If it's anywhere below 4, you're pretty much good to go in using it.
Okay,
3.5 is kind of ideal. In this, we're just checking the pH.
Right.
We're not adjusting it. We're not gonna add anything. As long as that pH is coming down, we know these lactic acid bacteria are increasing in population in here.
Awesome.
And doing what they do. But we're not looking to change it or say, oh, the pH is too high or too low, let's fix that. That's not what's happening. So this is pretty much sealed up. Gwen's gonna keep an eye on the pH in the coming days, and very soon she's gonna have a really large volume of a very vital prep that's gonna help this farm.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited. I've learned so much today. Thank you so much for being here. We'll revisit the whole situation. I'll keep you guys up on it. Miles, you know, you're so knowledgeable, and over the years, just been like such a cool person to be around. So thank you so much for doing this with us today. I know that you have a website, Instagram, right?
Sure, all of that. I mean, I will say right off the bat, the best way to get my products is through BuildaSoil.
Perfect.
You can learn some stuff about them and check out my site, fermentedplantextracts.com, or at Fermented Plant Extracts on Instagram. Also check out my clothing brand, Weed Should Taste Good, which is weedshouldtastegood.com, or at Weed Should Taste Good on Instagram. And yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I love the vibes down here at BuildaSoil, and I love to come down here and connect with the community. And I'm so stoked by what you're doing. I'm constantly impressed by the quality of product you put out of this thing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And again, thank you guys for watching this video today. As always, please drop your comments down, ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. And we'll see you on the next episode.